We're always like, where to start? So much has happened. It's just been one of those summers.
Yeah, sure has.
I mean, comparing to pandemic years, man, this is just out of control. But we've gotten past the busiest stuff.
Right.
Now we're going from like unsustainably busy to just really busy.
Right.
By the way, I wanted to say thanks to Van for watching our shows. I talked to my mom last night, and she said that Van came over to say hi and like mentioned some stuff that he would only know if he was watching our podcast. And I was like, I can't believe how this thing gets around. So
yeah. Yeah.
So
of course, we'd like to thank.
Van.
Yeah. Hey, Van, and everyone who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just keep finding out that people are watching, and it just tickles me pink every time. It's more than just our moms. In fact, my mom hasn't even kept up with these. She's been busy with other more important things. There's a lot that's more important than this podcast.
Yeah. I can't think of any of them, but I'm sure there. Yeah. No. Where to dive in?
I guess we could go chronologically. Oh, no, wait. We also want to talk about in-ears. Do you want to get that out of the way first, or talk about what we did first?
Let's talk about what we did first.
Okay. And then we're going to talk about in-ear monitors. So this week, I think the first notable thing to talk about was Wednesday night, was it? Or Thursday night? We had a gig with Cody Qualls at the...
Thursday.
Okay. At the Louisville Summer Concert Series, which is where he's from. He grew up there. So it was really cool to see him playing to the crowd, like the hometown crowd, families he's known for years and years. It was a big field, completely packed full of people. Blankets and chairs and everything, kids running around and dancing. I played bass, you played guitar. I sang a little bit. Amanda Hawkins was a featured vocalist there. She sings all the Nuggets and Avalanche national anthems before each of the games, at home games.
I sing a lot, which I normally don't.
Yeah. You sing more than I do, actually, because I'm finding it very, very hard to sing and play bass. Which is interesting because I used to do that.
Well, and also a lot of that stuff tends to be funky pop, it's syncopated, or,
that's a
or
huge
funky
part of it.
bass lines. It's not,
Yeah, our band, Adrienne O, had a lot of pretty even timing.
Right.
Da, 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 da. And I just kind of let my right hand just go with that. But when I'm playing like bump, ba bump, bump, ba bump, or something like that. That's not a particular song, but
holes in it.
I cannot line. I could practice and really line up the stuff, and I did have to do that with Adrienne O sometimes. I had to literally.
Yeah, not all those bass lines were super
down,
easy, but yeah.
Anyway, so you're singing a lot. It was really hot. That's the main thing about that gig.
Unbelievably hot. It was a concrete stage. The awning or the ceiling or whatever didn't cover the band. It was just around the back of it. And the stage was facing directly west, so directly into the sun. So at soundcheck, for example, between 5 and 6 o'clock, we were standing just directly facing into late afternoon sun. It's 100 degrees outside. And the set was really rough, too. I mean, it finally, the sun went behind the trees.
The heat during the set. Not
Yeah.
set itself went fine.
Set was fine. Other than I was literally making mistakes because I was just like...
dizzyingly hot.
Getting like, woozy.
I did okay because I wore this really gauzy dress, and I went ahead and wore my not so super cool sun hat.
Yeah.
And so I just had my head down, and like the sun hat's like creating this little oval of shade for myself.
I know. I was getting blasted. This heat this year has been like, I mean, it just like, it feels like I kept having to put on sunscreen because it felt like my skin was burning.
The Colorado sun is like radiation.
The radiation, you just feel that radiation. And Saturday, another Petty Nicks.
Yeah, and this was our first ever Petty Nicks playing at a wedding. Well, it wasn't at the wedding. It was apparently the day after the wedding.
Right.
So a lot of people had come from far away, as far as Australia, apparently.
Wow.
And Israel. People came from a long way for this wedding. And I guess the ceremony and probably the typical reception were the night before.
Right.
And then they rented out Moe's Barbecue downtown, like South Broadway, which is a bowling alley and a music venue and a stellar barbecue place. So they rented the whole thing out for another party, and they hired us as the entertainment.
Yeah, right.
And it was really fun because after sound check, we had a couple of hours and we all played free. We all bowled for free. I haven't done that in forever. I think I've bowled maybe once or twice in my life.
Yeah, so you do know you're right-handed, right?
Yeah?
Okay.
Why?
Because you were bowling a lot with your left hand.
No, I never. I bowled once with my left hand because Julian and Ari tried to bowl with their left hand just to see what would happen.
Okay.
All you saw, I did it once.
I'm just checking.
I know I was very clumsy and threw a lot of gutter balls. But I think when I threw with my left hand, it wasn't a gutter ball.
No, it was...
It was actually decent.
It was pretty good. Now I don't know why I'm checking.
but yeah, it was pretty awful. Pretty awful.
Yeah, well, when you don't do it ever.
It was funny because I'm so used to being decent at anything I do physically.
Right.
I felt very like a fish out of water of like, I'm embarrassed. I don't know how to move my body this way. I don't know how to time the steps. Like, I felt like an octopus or something, like too much to coordinate. And it's just bowling. Like, we think we know how it works from just watching it, but then I try to go do it, and I'm like, I take a stutter step, and no, and I start again. I'm like, right, left foot, right foot, a hand up now, left,
Which
is way too much thinking.
Which is odd because you're an amazing athlete.
I'm
you're
generally pretty coordinated.
A national champion athlete.
Anyway,
not in bowling.
So, we had a great time hanging out with a band.
Yeah. Great time with the guys. The show was great.
Oh my gosh. Another great one. And, I wasn't sure how this would go being a different context for this show.
Yeah.
We just did our thing. We didn't try to be a, quote, wedding band. We didn't.
No, we just did the show.
Uptown Funk or anything.
The concert style show.
And they loved it.
Yeah.
American Girl, the whole room was jumping up and down, arms in the air. It was such a concert, crazy concert experience. It was just like, if it had been one of those floors that gives a little bit, the whole place would have been bouncing.
Right.
It was crazy.
Yeah. Another unbelievably hot one.
That's right. It was really warm in there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's the way Colorado is right now.
Yeah, I know. It's just a pain to completely ruin every piece of clothing you're wearing in one wear because you're just sweating that much.
Yeah.
But it is what it is, and that was great. Transitioning into talking about in-ears, we said we were going to talk about that. That's been a topic of a lot of debate with the Petty Band, and Saturday night at Moe's, perfect example of... Oh my gosh, was it loud on stage? And I'm not even 100% sure what was so loud.
I was thinking as I went for a run today, we are consistently having this issue where we sound check just fine, and then we play and it's insanely loud.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder if it's us. Is somebody turning way up after we sound check?
Some people might be sandbagging, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then everybody else has to turn up because that other person turned up or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I don't know, but it does... Yeah, we do need to figure that out. But yeah, I was getting blasted by something. I mean, the kick drum, bass drum monitor was right next to the drummer, and I think it was much louder 10 feet away where I was than it was where he was, because that was just like...
Talk about that. How is that possible? That's weird.
Well, bass frequencies, the waveform is very long, right? So if basically a sound can't be a sound until it completes the waveform, and that waveform repeats. And if that waveform is 6 feet long, 12 feet long, if you're right next to it, you're not getting that sound. I mean, I don't remember the details. I'd have to go look it up again. But, what you conceive as a bass frequency is 3 to 12 feet long, you know, before it starts really making a sound, because that wave just is like, you know, time and distance and everything. So that is probably one of the reasons bass players very often will be playing insanely loud because their amp is a foot behind them or 5 feet behind them. 20 feet away, all those frequencies have actually started making sounds, and so 20 feet away, everybody's getting blasted to death. But the bass player's like, I can barely hear it. And it's like, you know, that's, you know. So I think the bass drum in the monitor was probably doing the same thing. So it was just literally painful every time it hit. And then something else, I think maybe the keyboard was just unbelievably loud. I was just, my whole side of my left side of my head was sore.
Oh my gosh.
For 24 hours or something after that. Like literally the side of my head was sore.
Ow.
Yeah. And
we have
not
to figure
great.
this out.
And luckily I got a break fairly early on and ran back and was able to put something, you know.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't last for long, but like getting nuked.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm sure, I mean, that's one of the problems with any monitors is any speakers, and they're called point source speakers, is that what you're hearing relatively close to them is very different than what people are hearing 10 feet away, 20 feet away, 50 feet away. And so, you know, there's some inherent problems with monitors because of that, because you're close to your monitor, but what's hitting you is different than how it's hitting the people who are 10 or 15 feet away, who are in the line of that point source speaker.
Right.
What you have to think of with point source speakers, which most are, is that they're directional.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, you know. Anyway, that brings us to in-ears. So that's another way that people can monitor themselves, hear themselves on stage, is with in-ear monitors, which are basically just like little headphones that go in your ears. Let's talk about...
Yeah, there's a few different ways to run them. I use the simplest possible way to run them, but I can only do that because I'm a vocalist with one channel, and that's all I care to hear.
Right.
Not all instruments can do this, but I have a piece of gear it's a box where I plug the cable that comes out of my microphone. I plug that into the box, and then out of the back of the box, the sound engineer takes the signal. So it's just a total pass-through. It doesn't do anything to the signal. It just passes it through. But that box is a transmitter, so it sends the sound of my voice to a belt pack on my belt, which I have earbuds attached to. So then I hear nothing but my own voice in the earbuds. Now, since they're not custom-fitted earbuds, they're not earbuds, they're not soundproof. I still hear everything else on stage soaking in through them. So for me, it's basically a way to hear myself really clearly and reliably, no matter what kind of engineer we have or what kind of capabilities their PA has. They don't even need to know what's happening. And it gives me a little bit of ear protection. It attenuates the sound a little bit.
Right.
So that's how I run it. And so I can show up to any gig and be good.
And you often have given away your floor monitor.
Yeah.
The speaker on the floor. Because you've got control of giving yourself your own voice in your ear.
Yeah.
And Julian, the singer in Petty Nicks, he does the same thing, but has both his voice and his guitar.
Right. There's 2 channels in this box, so he sends both signals in.
And then the knob is kind of like this stepped knob. Basically, there's 2 knobs, so he can turn up his guitar or turn up his vocal or turn down his guitar. So he's got his own control of his...
For those 2 channels.
For those 2 channels in his ears. Now, the problem is that's not how most in-ears work.
Right.
And actually... I'm not even going to say the name of the one that does work that way. Because
we're buying them all up.
Because we're buying them all up.
I've literally bought 3 of them. Because they don't make them anymore.
They don't make them anymore, and literally nothing on the market does that. It's the smartest thing. Anyway.
So we've told you, that's how we do it, and you can't do that yourself. Sorry.
I mean, you could get on the Googles and figure out what's going on. But anyway, it drives me insane that like, and 15 years ago when I worked at Guitar Center, I would try to sell those to people all the time and be like, no, you don't understand. Look what this thing does. And people would be like, yeah, but that's not how in-ears work. And I'm like, well, you could use them the other way and then use them like this when you want. Anyway.
Yeah.
So normally what happens is a sound person, whether you're using that speaker on the floor or whether you're using in-ears, the sound person, in addition to mixing the speakers that are facing the audience, is sending you a mix of things that you ask for, and those are either going in your ears or, coming out of your speaker on the floor. And we can talk about what that looks like. Basically, at sound check, you are saying, could I get more of this? Could I get more guitar? Could I get more keyboard? Could I get more of my own voice? Can I get more of the other voices? Maybe I need to harmonize with. And that sound person is giving you that mix. I don't know if we should jump directly to downsides of that, but...
yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the downsides of that is someone else is in control of that.
I mean, it's true whether it's on the floor or it's...
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I would highly recommend anybody that's looking at in-ears, if you are going to be doing the traditional way where a sound person is sending you signal that you've got in your ears, you want to buy an in-ear system that is $300 or up, maybe $500-ish dollars.
Are there any that are as little as $300?
Oh no, there's in-ear systems now that are $100.
Oh, okay.
Okay. God knows Amazon. There may be some that are cheaper than that. The difference is the more expensive ones, $300-$500, somewhere around there, have limiters in them. Which what a limiter does is it will only let a sound get so loud. It limits how loud a sound will get, right? Yeah. And if you don't have limiters and you've got things in your ears, that would let a sound guy blow up your ears. Yeah. Or, hey, let's not completely talk terrible about sound guys. Let's say someone knocks over a microphone and that microphone hits the stage super hard. Without a limiter, the full volume of that microphone hitting the floor is going to go right into your ears, right?
My ears hurt thinking about this.
Yeah, it could be feedback, it could be anything. It could be really bad. So if you are going to be running traditional in-ears where anyone is sending you stuff, absolutely, number one, be prepared to spend the money. Don't go get a super cheap set. Number two, probably read some specs and make sure that it has a limiter in the body pack or in somewhere in the circuit. Just a general safety thing. Mm-hmm. The other downside is, stuff changes when you're playing live. Whether it changes and it shouldn't, because that happens all the time, that somehow, why is volumes changing in the monitors, but they are. Or, just people start playing louder, maybe, and so then you're reliant on the sound person to, if you need more of yourself, you've got to ask for it.
Mm-hmm. And it's technically true that the same thing can happen with the wedge on the floor. They're controlling that too. It absolutely does,
yeah.
But when it's being fed directly into your ears, any change or, miscalibration has a much bigger effect.
Right.
Than the wash of noise that you get on the floor with everybody else mixed in too.
Right. I mean, very often for myself, I don't necessarily need a monitor because I am hearing everybody else on stage, just their own volume. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing other people's monitors. I half the time in the petty band, I don't have a monitor at all.
It's loud enough.
Yeah. And sometimes that's not okay, but it's fine. And sometimes it's just fine. It doesn't matter. Let's talk, though. Here's an important point, because maybe this is why we got onto it. It's talking about not being able to hear yourself, which is, I would say, is one of the biggest complaints I hear from talking to people we work with, and people who are newer to performing on stage seem to have an unbelievable amount of trouble hearing themselves. And it seems to be really universal. So I don't know if you can speak to that. I mean, I can speak to that in that I think to a certain degree it's a bit of a skill getting used to being able to separate yourself out from everything that's going on in the because a lot of it on a stage sounds like nonsense. There's a lot of white noise of it just being loud, and there's cymbals, and so being able to separate out your thing from all that stuff, I think some of that is just I don't want to even say skill, but it's something you develop. It's
absolutely
an ability and I've noticed running sound that sometimes there are situations where like you cannot give someone enough to where they feel like they can hear themselves. Like just like I've literally walked from the soundboard and walked over and like leaned over the monitor and been like, oh my God, how are you standing in front of that? Like, and they're still like, I can't hear myself. I can't hear myself.
Yeah.
And it's like, and there's nothing bad about that. That's not a personal, like nothing's wrong with you for feeling that way. It's just getting used to, separating yourself out from everything, kind of being able to block out some of the stuff that's in your way. And I would say you know better, but part of it is that singers are so used practicing by themselves in a room.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's never going to sound like you singing by yourself to a moderate volume of your backing track or your karaoke track in your house.
Right.
What I used to do to get used to it before I had a lot of time on stage was I would crank the stereo to an ear-splitting volume at home. Ear-splitting. I mean, I've maybe put earplugs in.
Sure.
But I would practice singing along to a track that was so loud I couldn't hear myself.
Yeah.
So I could get used to the feeling of like trying to pick my voice out of the din and the feeling of singing by feel.
Which is another thing that is very impressive that you have just keep getting better and better at.
Now I've gotten really good at it.
You're extremely good at it. Is singing by feel. Which I think some of it too is when you're even speaking, you don't notice it. Most people probably don't notice it when they're talking, but you do. Your voice vibrates in your body, and when you're singing, of course, that's even more. And then when you're on a loud stage, even a moderately loud stage, there's all this other vibration, and it does probably compete with that vibration that you feel in your body when you're just doing it by yourself. But you've developed that awareness of the tension in your throat, or that's probably a bad description, but
it's like muscle memory
memory, to the point that at soundcheck you'll start singing one of the songs we do and you'll be perfectly in key.
I never think I'm going to be because I don't have anything close to perfect pitch.
No. But, and it's not perfect pitch. It's not your ears.
It's my muscles. Yeah.
It's the muscles. Anyway, so I guess the big takeaway there is it's just experience. It's just doing it, putting up with it.
Yeah, and it's tough to get there. I mean, I would recommend singing along to loud music at home. And then as far as, if we're talking to our clients who perform at our showcases, like in our student bands or our individual singers who perform with the live showcase band, in-ears are a tricky thing to add. I mean, I guess we could set up an inline system and pass around the belt pack. We could technically do that, but we can't set up a new in-ear system. Like we can't run a new mix for every new singer who comes on stage. That's for sure. That's,
that would be the issue with something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in a student band situation, since we do have a moment to line check at least,
right,
we could set up in-ears.
Right. Although an additional consideration is different venues. So you've got all the mics and stuff are coming into a mixing board, and the little faders and stuff are controlling the sound that's coming out of the mains, the front of house, the audience speakers. And then they've got a different set of mixing capabilities that is going to the monitors, whether they're floor monitors or ears. And different mixing consoles, have different numbers of mixes. Meaning,
right,
if a venue only has 4 mixes, that means they can only send 4 different monitor situations to the stage. Meaning, if you're going to use one of those for in-ears, now you've got 3 for everybody else. Mm-hmm. Maybe they have 6, maybe they have 8, maybe they have 12, but there is a limit to how many different mixes they can send back to the stage. Mm-hmm. So that's, an additional thing to think about.
I would probably end up giving the idea a thumbs up for our student bands.
Right.
Because they get at least a quick sound check. And so there's already a monitor on the floor. They could move the XLR cable from the monitor to the in-ear pack.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to find the super special kind of gear that we have. It could be any kind of good in-ear monitor solution. So that could totally work. It doesn't really work when we've got like a singer coming up every other song.
Although I would say, quick thing, and I do need to leave. I just really quickly want to talk about monitor philosophy. And my personal philosophy on monitors is you want to have absolutely as little as you can in that monitor. If you were a touring act and you had a dedicated sound guy and you were running in-ears and he was tweaking it every night, you could get just sounds like you're listening to the CD, CDs for younger viewers. You're listening to the Spotify, right in your ear. And, but when you're not, and you're working with, just the venue sound guy or speakers on the floor for a different reason, I really advise people to have the minimum you need in that monitor. If there's another instrument that doesn't help you do your job, just leave it out. Like it's great to hear everybody, and
you'll hear some just from being on stage. Some. They've got their own monitor. Yeah. So when we set up sound for our student bands and our singers, I try to make the lead singer front floor monitors as loud as possible. Mm-hmm. And I don't put anything else in there unless we really need a little bit of keys or something.
Right. Part of the reason I think the way I do is, like, for example, the stage left guitar, one of two things is happening. Either we're playing the same thing and we're both doing it right, in which case I don't need to hear it, or two, we're not doing the same things and it's not right, but we're in the middle of a show, so I can't change. Like, what am I going to, if he's playing the wrong chord, what am I going to do? Shift to also the wrong chord? So it doesn't help me. Either way, I can't do it. It's not information that I can use.
Yeah.
So I don't even need to hear that. And that's just kind of my philosophy and the way I grew up playing. And, if you don't need it, get rid of it. The other thing I would say, just monitor philosophy in general, is rather than talking about turning stuff up, the first thing you should think about is, what can I turn down? Mm-hmm. I can't. Another running sound thing, the number of times people are like, I can't hear myself, I can't hear my voice, and I walk over to the monitor and it's like the guitar is like unbelievably loud in your monitor. It's like, well, of course you can't hear it. Like, how about I turn the guitar down? And they're like, oh, okay, that's good, thanks, man, I'm way louder now. And you're like, you're not. So the first thing you should think is, like, what's competing. Not just turn me up, but what is competing? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's even asking other musicians. Drummers can't really do anything about it, and they're going to get mad if you ask. But other people might be like, hey, can you just, like, maybe angle your amplifier away from me, or any of those things, just to kind of like clear some space for yourself.
Yeah.
Anyway. That's in-ears, that's monitors.
Yeah. I would like to say real quick, we won't get into it, but there is another way that bands run in-ear monitors, which is to run it themselves. But that's very complicated. It's not for probably the guys, anybody listening to this, but it's where you take the signal from each vocalist and musician on stage and you split it And one of those goes to a mixer that the band has on stage, and maybe people use an app on their phone to mix their own mixes. And then the other half, the signal goes to the house for them to do what they want with. But that is a whole other layer of complication.
Yeah. And ideally, that having your own mixer, running your own in-ears, ideally is great. I know we've played with bands. I've been in bands that have done that. And we've played with bands that have done that. I know we were at the Oriental Theater and a band was doing that, and for whatever reason it wasn't working for them, and they were losing their minds trying to figure out why it wasn't working right up to the minute before they went on. So, that sounds ideal, and it is as long as it works. Anyway, anything else?
No, that's pretty much what we did. You had some sessions, some recording as usual.
Finished Casey's EP finally.
Yep.
That's done. That's cool. Getting released.
Good.
Yeah.
And then coming up, we have a duo gig that we are preparing for.
Yep.
It's gonna be actually two duo gigs, so it's just the two of us. Those are gonna be fun. It's been a while.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about how we do that stuff in another thing. So,
sounds good.
Got a rehearsal later today.
Yep.
Gosh, I guess let's just call it.
Yeah.
I gotta get to a lesson and...
Okay. I'll see you at the studio in about an hour.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you.